Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder, and this is BRN AM for Thursday, February 4th, 2021. And here are our top stories: preventing an eviction and legal tips when buying or leasing real estate. Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Thomas Major. He's a principal with Offutt Kerman. Tom, great to see you. Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you. It's nice to see you.
It's great to have you on. And, we've talked on this program with real estate investors, real estate agents, and even those who report on real estate. But I thought it may be very helpful for the audience to hear from an attorney who specializes in real estate. So the first thing I wanted to talk with you about is eviction. And there are many Americans who may, because of the COVID crisis, may not be able to pay their rent, having some difficulties. They're trying to work with their landlord. But I wanted to get some thoughts from you on eviction, and you're based in New Jersey, so maybe share some of your experiences in New Jersey right now.
So right now, evictions in New Jersey just aren't happening. There is a statewide eviction moratorium. There's a companion executive order from the governor that goes with it. But it essentially provides that there'll be no evictions except for evictions in the interest of justice. The laws don't really define what that means, what the interest of justice is. But suffice it to say, if there's a tenant who's just not paying rent, or if you are a tenant and you're not paying rent, the non-payment of rent alone right now is not, you can't be evicted. It's not a basis for eviction while the moratorium's in effect. And so the courts really aren't even holding landlord-tenant proceedings for reasons other than non-payment, on top of the fact that there's a moratorium. Interestingly, tenants who owe rent have a right to apply their security deposit to their unpaid balance. That's also an executive order of the 2020 vintage. And so there are some legal options for tenants not paying rent, but for the most part, everything is kind of in a holding pattern while we wait for the new normal to arrive.
Now, thanks for that, Tom. And is it still in the best interest of tenant and landlord to make a phone call on one or the other to say, how can we work this out? Because there are a lot of landlords that are not big, property owners. They may have 1, 2, 3, 4 different rentals. They're like a mom and pop renter. And wouldn't it behoove them just to have a conversation, try to work something out, maybe lower the payment if possible?
Yes, and here's why. There are the landlord-tenant practice, or the landlord-tenant relationship, is a small part of a much larger real estate environment that has all manner of codependencies built into it, and inputs and outputs that are built into it. Everything is interconnected in that way. Most of the time, when people discuss a landlord-tenant relationship, it's very easy to think of it like like a Charles Dickens novel, where there's an evil landlord and a virtuous tenant, and it's all about good versus evil. In reality, the landlord-tenant relationship is just a small part of a much larger interconnected, financial scheme. And so it benefits everyone to continue dialogue, or to initiate a dialogue, because one man's unpaid rent is another man or woman's unpaid mortgage. One person's default in rent is another person's default on a mortgage and a foreclosure. There's also an asymmetry in information. There are many regional, local, county, or statewide assistance programs for tenants who are suffering, and correspondingly landlords who are suffering. And it's just the information on these programs, or the awareness of these programs, is not evenly distributed. And so it is possible that someone's landlord may know more about assistance available to a tenant than the tenant him or herself. Or that a tenant may be able to tell the landlord, I've applied for this program, it's available to me, I expect to have some money by this date, what can we do? The problem with the current state of affairs is that the only way to deal with these things is with black and white rules for the time being. And the problem with black and white rules is they tend to produce black and white results that nobody wants. We can mitigate some of that by working together and keeping a dialogue going, so that at least maybe we all benefit from a shade of gray.
Yeah. Now, Tom, you mentioned some programs where you're in New Jersey. You're barred, I believe, in New Jersey, maybe elsewhere. But where can New Jersey, people who are watching this in New Jersey, own property in New Jersey, or renting in New Jersey, where can they find some of this information? Is it on the governor's website? Is it on the New Jersey website somewhere, newjersey.gov?
So the first thing to think of when someone's seeking out COVID-related information is always keep in mind that there are 3 layers of government, or 4 really, you're interacting with on a daily basis. There's your city, the county, the state, and the federal government. The federal government is the stuff that's in the news all the time, so it's really not hard to find out what's going on there. New Jersey has a very elegantly designed COVID-19 portal that the state manages that provides all manner of resources for tenants struggling with paying rent or falling behind on utility payments, and also contains some basic information on do's and don'ts during COVID. But more than that, there are counties with county-specific relief programs, and there are even cities with city-specific relief programs. So, for example, in northern New Jersey, Jersey City has a specific tenant relief program. I believe Newark either has or is discussing a similar type program. And there are also county level programs in Hudson and Essex respectively that sort of sit on top of that. And so the most likely place to find information is probably the state level COVID-19 portal, but don't stop there. I would also check county level, city level, and then anything you could find at the federal level.
Yeah. And Tom, having the courts not available yet. I mean, you mentioned they're not yet available. They're not taking cases. I mean, what happens at the end of all this? Let's just say that things open back up in April, May. Many people are vaccinated. The virus is tamped down. I'm just, hypothetical. I don't know anything. But what about the reinstitution of the legal process? Does it just happen all at once and then you start getting phone calls and people start getting kicked out? How does that work?
Well, we should make one point briefly just to clarify the current state of affairs. The courts are holding hearings on a case-by-case basis for specific landlord-tenant cases. Your run-of-the-mill non-payment case is not being heard, but if there are emergent circumstances, damage, assault, or something really compelling, the Supreme Court has created a system in which a landlord can seek a trial on a landlord-tenant matter if the circumstances are sufficiently emergent. As for how things look when the new normal arrives, I'm not so sure anyone really knows, because in New Jersey, eviction actions are separate from simply owing somebody money. So in a landlord-tenant case, all the landlord gets is the right to take the apartment back and remove the tenant. It has nothing to do with the payment of money. Now, practically speaking, the payment of money to the landlord, either in settlement or in whole, ends up obviating the need for an eviction. So the two are tied in that sense. But in reality, if a landlord wins in the landlord-tenant case, all they get is the apartment back and the money's in the wind. The current state of affairs doesn't allow for eviction cases, meaning possession of the apartment, but it says nothing about someone's existing and accruing obligation to pay rent. And so what you could have is, when the new normal arrives, a bunch of tenants in possession of an apartment while getting sued separately for the money that they owe, which they can't pay. And squaring those two, I don't think, or at least I haven't heard of any method for squaring those two. A tenant in possession of an apartment for over a year without paying, while a simultaneous civil action for the money is proceeding.
Well, I guess we're going to have to wait and see. The best thing to do, as you said, is open a conversation, be communicative, because if not, who knows how people are going to react, and you don't want to be on the wrong side of things. Tom, I want to go to a very quick break. When we come back, we'll get some tips on what you need to think about when buying or renting a piece of real estate from Tom. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here, and if you're on Medicare, this is important. You're now entitled to eliminate copays and get dental care, dentures, eyeglasses, prescription coverage, in-home aids, unlimited transportation, and home-delivered meals, all at no additional cost. Plus, your zip code may have coverage with the Give Back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month. Look, with the uncertainty of the virus and vaccines, you need to get everything you're entitled to. Here's the bottom line. Call to get significant benefits at no additional cost and see if your zip code has coverage with the Give Back benefit. Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline. You can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-924-3920. That's 1-800-924-3920.
Welcome back. We're talking to Thomas Major of Offutt Kerman. Tom, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Thank you.
A really interesting conversation. And I think a lot of people, when you're buying that property or you're renting that apartment, oftentimes people don't think about the legal aspect of it. And that's not, they're just not thinking about it for many reasons. But Tom, let's talk about first a buyer, someone who's buying, and maybe it's during COVID, it's after COVID. What are some of the things when you're looking at that contract and you're getting ready to ink a deal? What are some of the things that you need to think about as a buyer to make sure that you're transacting business correctly?
So the number one rule I like to follow is settled expectations. If you're buying or selling real estate, whether it's whether you're purchasing a home or you're purchasing a place to rent, or you're buying a home or buying a place to rent, the number one starting point is settled expectations, because the other party, your counterparty, won't know what is important to you in the deal if you don't raise it. And so, the real estate practice is populated in large part by form contracts. In New Jersey, it's common for real estate agents to prepare what they call broker prepared contracts that are that contain most of the essential terms, and they're approved by the Real Estate Association in the state. And it's very easy for people to say, I've seen this place, I want it, I'm going to buy it, sign the broker prepared contract, and then wait and see what happens. That is a common error to make, because later during an attorney review process, or even in the performance of the contract, it's a recipe for disaster to surprise your counterparty with, well, I didn't tell you at the time, but I need this, or does the house have this, or what happens if this happens, if I lose my job, or the deposit is late, or I can't close on time. And so my number one rule in contracting is, at the time we're about to begin the contractual relationship, let's do the best we can to have settled expectations. And oftentimes that means taking the time to arrive at what your essential terms are, and ensuring that when you're about to go into contract, your essential terms are shared with your counterparty. In a leasing setting, that often means the amount of the late fee, when the late fee is due, the access to amenities, any ancillary fees, when the amenities can be closed, when they're opened, who controls them. In a larger real estate purchase transaction, common essential terms are the date of the deposit, the rules for forfeiting the deposit if it's to be forfeited, the closing date, inspection contingencies, mortgage contingencies, and these kinds of things. And so if you're considering engaging in really any contractual relationship, to the extent it's negotiable, the starting point is always your essential terms should become the other party's essential terms the moment you share them.
Tom, how do you do that? I mean, is it you consult with an attorney like yourself, you sit down as a couple or as partners, and you make that list together, and you kind of put together a bulleted list? I mean, how would you typically, if I came to you and said, Tom, I want to buy this property, and would you sit down with my wife and I, and then we would kind of figure that out?
So my preference, so my order of operations, or my preferred order of operations for this, is arrive at your essential deal points or your essential terms first, and then have a discussion with your attorney about how your attorney is going to turn your essential terms into contract terms. Because in an attorney-client relationship, your attorney is just your agent. Now, especially trained to assist you in the preparation of contractual terms, but really just your agent, a glorified mouthpiece, so to speak. And so you need to decide for you what's best first, and then bring it to your professional. And in a discussion, ideally, in a perfect setting, the professional will raise to you things that you may not have considered. For example, I understand that you think that your ideal closing date is 60 days. Do you think it might be worth doing 90 days because I've closed a number of transactions in which it takes longer to get a mortgage approved or longer to get through underwriting than maybe we realize? That's my sense of the market. What do you think? And then between the two of you, you arrive at an agreement on, what, we think that input's useful. Yes, let's do 90 or 75 or something like that.
Tom, when it comes to those leasing agreements you were talking about, you really have to read the fine print, I would suppose, right? I mean, let me back up. What is your sense for the flexibility? If you're renting in a large building, do you have some flexibility in terms of what you can propose to the landlord? Or does that really just come down to if it's an individual owner of a condominium or some other property that you're renting, you have a little bit more flexibility?
It's kind of like everything in life. The larger the person or company you're dealing with, the less likely it is to be negotiable. Amazon is not going to compromise with you. But a local hardware store might. So the larger the landlord, the less likely they are to entertain a discussion on terms. Interestingly, in New Jersey, landlord-tenant contracts and leases are considered contracts of adhesion, which is a very fancy legal way of saying courts recognize that they're essentially non-negotiable when they're going in. Because a landlord's got a place to live, and you're a human being, you need a place to live. Practically speaking, how much negotiation is really going to happen if you need a roof over your head and somebody's offering it to you at a price you can afford? And so, while most of a residential lease may not be negotiable, you can at least be aware of the boundaries of the agreement. For example, how a late fee is going to be calculated, when it's going to be assessed, if there's any circumstance where it can be waived, pet fees, the amount of the security deposit. And these are things that if can't be negotiated, you can at least be aware of prior to beginning the relationship.
Tom, anything to think about, even, we've been in the midst of this COVID pandemic for 12 months plus. Presumably we're going to be in it for quite some time. We had a whole conversation about the court system. Things to think about under this current state of affairs that maybe we didn't cover as part of this segment. Are there other things that you just need to be aware of going into leasing or buying a new property?
Legally speaking, in my opinion, probably not. The laws is pretty much settled, but and the way the legal system has adjusted to the current state of affairs is pretty much settled. Fortunately, there are very few surprises on a day in and day out basis in the court operations. But there is one thing that I think is underappreciated in this environment. When everyone is mostly confined to their homes or isolated or social distancing, it's very easy to sit behind a computer and assume the worst, either intentions or in tone, of the person you're dealing with. And it's very easy to get angry emails and to send angry emails. And any relationship, a legal contractual one, or anything else, needs to at least have some element of humanity to it. And so the one thing I see every day that I wish I could wave a wand and change is everyone can be annoyed. Everyone's pissed off. Nobody enjoys the current state of affairs. I think if we all maybe took a split second to resist the temptation to either respond in kind or to lash out or to emote in a way that feels satisfying at the time but maybe destructive long term, if we all just took a breather in our discussions in a legal setting or maybe even in a personal setting, I think we'd be better off for it. I've seen, especially in the landlord-tenant setting, because people are understandably stressed out, very easily resolvable problems quickly become monumental issues where people are at each other's throats, largely because people will say things in email that they wouldn't say if we were just standing in front of the apartment or on the street or even on the phone talking to each other. And so if there's one thing that I'd like to add, it's just that no matter what, any contractual relationship is essentially the business of people. And people make mistakes and people say things they don't mean, but we all should try to extend to each other a measure of grace, even under stressful circumstances. And maybe if everyone does that just a little bit, what seem as big problems today may be slightly more resolvable, smaller problems tomorrow.
Well, I think, look, you couldn't have put it any better. And I think what you have stated, Tom, would really do well in other facets, other pieces of business, and in other parts of the world as well. Tom, we're going to have to leave it there. Really a pleasure to catch up with you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed being here.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to? Then drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, all in one place, check out today's edition of our newsletter, The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.